Okay, almost time for some afternoon WMMA talks. Let me see if I get anybody in here in a second here, and then we will go live. Okay, we got one person. That's all I need. All right, welcome back to WMAC Now with your host, Chuck Stevenson. Today we're going to do something a little different. Normally, if I do fight announcements, I parse them out into separate videos, like 1, 2, 3 at a time. But today I want to do something a little bit different, and we're going to put them all into one live stream, get them all out there, save me probably like 3 hours worth of time, condense it down into like maybe a half hour, 1 hour at the most. But before we get into it, first, please like the stream. That helps get the algorithm going, lets people, more people know that I am live. Share it. No, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whichever social media platform you're on, please share it as well. Also, I'm wearing my Panda Xiongjingnan shirt today, and I am part of the One Store affiliate program. So if you go to the affiliate links in the description below, you can go and get 10% off this shirt or similar gear from the One Championship shop. So let's get down into it. UFC announced like 6 fights within the last 2 days. Couldn't even keep up with all of them. And I wanted to talk about each one individually. So let's get down into it. So first one we're going to talk about is a flyweight bout going down April 23rd at a UFC Fight Night. We've got Macy Barber taking on Montana Delarosa. Let's see. This is actually a rescheduling of this bout. So they were supposed to fight at UFC 269. Montana Delarosa withdrew. And then Macy Barber ended up withdrawing from that as well. And it ended up being Aaron Blanchfield versus what's her name? Miranda Maverick. But so these two are now going to fight again April 23rd. Barber is still ranked number 12 in the flyweight division. Let's go ahead and take a look at the stats on this one. So the future Barber is at 9-2. Delarosa at 12-6-1. Let's see. Delarosa is the elder fighter, 27-23 for Barber. Delarosa is a little bit taller, 5'7", 170 centimeters to 5'5", 165 centimeters for Barber. And Delarosa has the reach advantage as well, 68 inches, 173 centimeters to 65 inches, 165 centimeters. Conference chicanery in the chat. Keep watching and you'll learn. Let me see here. So Barber's coming off the split decision win over Miranda Maverick 5 months ago, but before that she was on 2 losses. Delarosa coming off a win over Ariana Lipski 7 months ago. Interesting bout. I think the stats are more interesting to me. I was surprised that Delarosa is the taller and longer fighter of the two. This is a weird one. I mean, Delarosa, if you ask me who technically is the better of the two fighters, I would say Delarosa. She's the cleaner of the two, the more technically sound. But I don't know if she beats Barber. This is a strange one to me. I mean, Delarosa's striking. She does things, by the numbers. She's all right on the ground. To me, she just has a hard time putting it all together and putting it all together in a manner that, can get things done. I mean, she struggles against, the top end of this division or even like the middle end of this division, and does well against like the bottom end. But you could also say that about Barber too. Barber is not nearly as technical as Delarosa is. She tends more towards like this, to go more off of instinct and using her straight athleticism and power. But she also doesn't put things together as well, nearly as much either. Because like I said, she goes by instinct. What feels like it's going to work. Also, I think just Barber, she's been going, her training environment is always the best either. So she hasn't been able to really improve in the way that you would expect a younger fighter to do so. And conference chicanery says that too. You know, coddling didn't help, so she's lost the elite level until she figures it out. And Barber has a wealth of physical tools and plenty of heart, but we can see her issues as a fighter are longstanding and getting more obvious. I have to agree. She has all the physical tools, but doesn't have the technical ones. And her, switching around between camps after a loss or sometimes even after a win hasn't really helped as much. As a fan of Delarosa, I want to pick her, but I have a hard. If Barber connects with one or two big ones, it's going to put Delarosa in trouble. This is. I'm going to have to watch some more tape on this one, some more playback before I can really make a pick. For now, I'll go with Delarosa to win this one. Also, on that same night, we have a strawweight bout between 10th ranked Amanda Lemos and the number 1 ranked flyweight Jessica Andrade. Jessica Andrade is moving back down to flyweight or strawweight. Let me bring the stats up here. This should be a banger. But Amandina coming in at 11-1-1. Bate Estaca Andrade coming in at 22-9. Let's see. Let me bring up the fight on my iPad real quick here. Get the fight history. Lemos is riding, I believe, a 5-fight win streak since she lost her UFC debut. Yeah, 5-fight win streak. Most recently, decisioned Angela Hill. That was a split decision, very contentious bout as well. Bate Estaca coming off a win over Cynthia Calvillo, knocked her out in the first round. And before that, lost her title bid to Valentina Shevchenko. Let's see. But overall, it's hard to say that. Overall, I'd say Andrade's, flyweight trip, her trip to flyweight was overall successful. I mean, 2-1. You only lost to the champ. But anyway, age. Lemos is the elder fighter, 34-30. She'll be taller as well, 5'4", 163 centimeters to 5'1", 155 centimeters for Andrade. And Lemos has the reach as well, 65 inches, 165 centimeters to 62 inches, 157 centimeters. So I did talk about this fight individually, but I wanted to include it as well since it's on the same date as Barber versus Delarosa. This one is going to be very dangerous for Andrade in the first round. She's going to have to bring her, her head movement in here. Going to have to be very smart defensively in the first round against Lemos. But if this goes past the first round, I see it favoring Andrade the longer and longer this fight goes. Because Lemos, we saw in the Hill fight, she is not used to being the one pressured. But that's exactly what Jessica Andrade is going to do to Amanda Lemos. Andrade is all pressure all the time. And she knows exactly how to fight fighters like Lemos as well. Not used to fighting fighters with quite as much punching power as Lemos. But Andrade is one of those fighters. She knows she's short, and she knows how to get past it. She'll come forward. She'll utilize low kicks to slow down her opponent. She'll apply the pressure. She'll mix strikes to the body and the head, and the body is what helps work down the cardio. And then she'll get inside to land more strikes to the body as well. Like I said, this very dangerous for Andrade in the first round because Lemos does have that one-hitter quitter power. But Lemos could definitely get the stoppage in the first round. People are going to say, "Oh, we'll just watch the Weili Zhang fight with Andrade." First off, Lemos does not fight in the clinch the way that Zhang does. And second of all, Zhang landed a lot of blows to the back of the head as well. So, and people love to forget that there was definitely some blows to the back of the head going on in that clinch work. Whereas Lemos, it's more straight punches. Now she could use those kicks too. Those straight kicks were very money against Angela Hill. That's actually what hurt Angela Hill. It wasn't Lemos' punches. It was the straight kicks that were hurting her. So first round is going to be very dangerous for Andrade. But the longer this fight goes, I see it favoring Jessica Andrade. So I'm going to go with Jessica Andrade here. That's my early pick here. Conference Chicanery says, Bullet has that kind of punching power. She made that pressure work against the pile driver. Yeah. Lemos is no Bullet, though. Lemos is no Bullet. Then we have a flyweight bout. Gina Mazzani taking on Shanna Young. Both ladies moving to flyweight for this one. This goes down at a fight night scheduled for April 30th. Neither of these fighters are ranked, so this won't have any, there's no real high stakes for this one as far as the rest of the division is concerned. But I think this is do or die for each of these fighters. So looking at the stats here, Mazzani is 7-5. Shanna Young is 7-4. Mazzani coming in off of a loss to Priscilla Cachoeira 8 months ago, preceded by a win over Rachel Ostovich. Shanna Young is coming off of, well, she's lost 2 straight in the UFC since coming in. First lost a decision to Macy Shevchenko almost 2 years ago. Then fought Stephanie Egger, got TKO'd by Egger on the ground 3 months ago. Mazzani's the elder fighter, 33-31 for Shanna Young. Young is taller slightly, 5'7", 170 centimeters to 5'6", 168 centimeters for Mazzani. Mazzani, though, has the reach advantage here. Nice reach advantage. 68.5 inch, 174 centimeters to 65 inches, 165 centimeters for Young. I'll be honest, this fight doesn't particularly interest me at all. But I felt like I had to include it because I was doing all the announcements, so I include this. This is a do or die fight for both of these two. I mean, if I remember correctly, Mazzani was brought in specifically for her last fight because she was cut from the UFC, or she was released after her contract had ended, if I remember correctly. And they brought her back in on short notice to take on Cachoeira. I believe that's what happened. So they only brought her back in as a filler. And then Young is 0-2 already in the promotion and hasn't really particularly shown much. So this is really a do or die fight for both of these ladies. As for who wins, your guess is as good as mine. I mean, I'm certainly not going to put a whole lot of effort into watching tape on this one. But we'll see. Anyway, that moves us on to another flyweight bout for the same April 30th fight night. Antonina Shevchenko taking on Courtney Cast Iron Casey. So La Pantera coming in at 9-4. Cast Iron coming in at 10-9. Shevchenko riding a 2-fight skid here. First getting submitted by Andrea Lee 8 months ago. most recently fought Casey O'Neill, losing a TKO 3 months ago. Courtney Casey actually coming off a win over Liana Jojua a little over 2 months ago. Before that, suffered 2 straight losses to Jillian Robertson and J.J. Aldrich. La Pantera is the elder fighter, 37-34 for cast iron. And unusually for her, Courtney Casey will not be the taller fighter in this bout. Shevchenko coming in at 5'8", 172 centimeters to 5'7", 170 centimeters for Casey. And a reach advantage to Shevchenko as well. 68 inches, 173 centimeters to 67 inches, 170 centimeters for Casey. So this fight's interesting to me because both are around the same size and both have a similar build, like body type. You know, tall, lanky, lean. And like I said, you know, Courtney Casey, she's not used to being the shorter fighter, even by as little as an inch. She's usually the taller fighter. And she's one of those fighters who she's usually has the height and the reach and then doesn't use it at all. She finally started to learn how to use it because she was doing it against Liana Jojua. But now she's fighting someone who is actually fighting someone her same height. Conference Chicanery says, this fight will say a lot about both fighters. I have to agree. This is another do or die fight here. Both of these ladies need a win because Shevchenko, she's lost 3 out of her last 4. For Casey, she's lost what? Well, she's 2-2 in her last 4, 2-3 in her last 5. So, yeah, it's definitely do or die for Courtney Casey here. As far as fighting styles, you know, Shevchenko, she's the Muay Thai stylist. Not so great on the ground. I mean, we've definitely seen that her ground skills do not live up to the same standards set forth by her sister. She's the older Shevchenko, but she is also definitely the lesser Shevchenko. For Casey, she doesn't really have a style. She's an all-around fighter. I mean, she's athletic. She definitely has the athleticism that a lot of fighters in mixed martial arts or the women's divisions tend to lack. She just can't put the skills together. And that's been her biggest problem for most of her fights. But also, like I mentioned earlier, she doesn't know how to use her height and reach. Now, that's kind of negated in this bout against Shevchenko. Casey likes to strike her way into the clinch. I don't think she's going to want to do that against Shevchenko. If you can avoid the clinch against a Muay Thai fighter, it's generally better to do that. But this is an interesting one. Shevchenko right now is... Oh, no, I'm sorry. I thought she was ranked, but neither of these fighters are ranked. So this is... So no, like, divisional consequences for this bout. But each of them really needs to get the win here if they want to stay in the UFC. Because either one of them could get cut. I think Courtney Casey is a lot more likely to get cut off a loss here than Shevchenko. Just because they'll keep throwing her bones because of her sister. But for Courtney Casey, she's definitely on the chopping block. Old guy, welcome to the chat. Says Shevchenko has lost too often and fallen well below expectations. Can't take too many losses. I agree. Although I think that unfortunately for her, her last name is what caused a lot of those high expectations. And, you know, a lot of pressure was put on her to perform. And people just expected more out of her because of who her sister is. And when they just failed to look at her as an individual mixed martial artist. I think she got done kind of dirty in that way. But I think Shevchenko will win this one. Kasich could pull it off, but my instinct says to go with Shevchenko. But I'm definitely going to, this isn't until April, so definitely going to keep my eye on this one and maybe do some more studying on it. But for now, my initial guess is going to be Antonina Shevchenko. Then we move to a featherweight bout scheduled for UFC 274 that goes down May 7th. We have the number 10 ranked bantamweight Macy Chiasson taking on the number 15th ranked bantamweight Norma Dumont, although why Dumont is ranked at bantamweight, I don't know. She never actually made the weight to fight there. So now we got a featherweight bout in a division that just doesn't really exist. Although I do think that featherweight is Macy's weight class. I think she's sacrificing way too much to get down to bantamweight. Anyway, let's look at the stats on this one. So Macy coming in at 7-2. Dumont, the Immortal, coming in at 7-1. Chiasson lost her last bout to Raquel Pennington via guillotine a little over a month ago. Dumont riding a 3-fight winning streak over Ashley Evans-Smith, Felicia Spencer, and then most recently defeated Aspen Ladd. All those came just over a year. So basically fighting 3 times in a little over a calendar year. Or no, that was less than a calendar year. So that was good for her. Dumont, a year elder, 31-30. Macy comes in with a nice height advantage, 5'11", 180 centimeters to 5'7", 169 centimeters for Dumont. Chiasson has the reach advantage as well. Very nice here as well. 72 inches, 183 centimeters to 67 inches, 170 centimeters for Dumont. So on the feet, I would say Dumont is definitely the better striker technically. But if I were Macy, I'd be putting every bit of that 4-inch height advantage and 5-inch reach advantage to use here. Now Dumont's going to come out, and I think she's going to try to utilize her kicks here. She's the Sandow stylist. Sandow loves using their kicks, especially the side kick. And I think that's what Dumont's going to try to unload on Macy here. But if I were Macy, I would look to use the height and reach it here as well. On the ground, I would go with Macy. I don't know why she would try to take it to the ground unless she's losing on the feet, and then she's going to have to do her best to close and to get it to the ground. But if I were Macy, I would work really hard on outside fighting for this fight. Use that height advantage, use that reach, and try to pick apart Dumont from the outside. For Dumont, she's actually going to have to want to get inside here. She's got to get inside, the kicking range, or do her best to get inside the striking range of Chiasson here. I don't think it'll be that hard for her. I mean, she's definitely the better striker, more experienced striker. So she should be able to do that. This one's a toss-up for me. I do want to see Macy. Let me rephrase that. I am interested in seeing Macy back up at featherweight, seeing how she acts there. Took that Pennington fight on short notice. Didn't look so good there. She missed weight it got moved to a featherweight bout so that Macy could take it, and then she missed weight by I think like 5 pounds, and just looked flabby. She had an absolute spare tire of loose skin in that fight. Didn't look good at all. But this fight, she'll be coming in. She has plenty of time. It's not happening until May 7th, so she's got February, March, April, May, 4 months to get into shape. And I expect her to get in shape for this one and be better prepared for this one to fight Dumont. So it'll be interesting. The brother man's in the chat, says, "What's up? What's up, the brother man?" So we'll have to see how this one goes. But then finally, we got a flyweight bout between 6th-ranked Viviane Araujo and 8th-ranked Andrea KGB Lee. This goes down at a UFC fight night scheduled for May 14th. This should be a good one. And this one has serious ranking implications for the division because both are within the top 10. And if Araujo wins, she stays in the same place. And then for KGB Lee, she can move closer to title contention. And she's been looking good in her last several fights after not looking good for quite a while. So let me bring up the stats on this one here as I get them up on my iPad as well. So Vivi coming in at 10-3, KGB coming in at 13-5. Now, Ujo's coming off a loss in her most recent fight 8 months ago to Katlyn Chookagian. No shame in that one. She just got straight out pointed. Before that was riding 2 fights over Montana Delarosa and then Mata Ferry. Like I said, KGB Lee, she's had a bit of a spring back. She was riding a 3-fight losing streak to Joanne Wood, Lauren Murphy, and then Roxy. But then she picked up a win over Antonina Shevchenko via submission. And then just straight up made Cynthia Calvillo, quit, basically. Beat her into submission. And Calvillo was sitting in a corner can't do it, I'm done. So Calvillo no most, basically. Let's see. Both fighters into their 30s. Viviane Araujo is 35 to KGB's 33. So for Viviane Araujo, she needs to get moving here. You're already 35 years old. If you're trying to get in title contention, she's got to do something. She's got to put on a run here. At 35, it's now or never. And if she can beat Andrea Lee, then, she stopped a fighter on a winning streak or, on a run and keeps her spot. But then she's got to, keep that momentum going. Lee is the taller fighter, 5'6", 168 centimeters to Araujo's 5'4", 163 centimeters. She has a slight reach advantage as well, 69.5 inches, 177 centimeters to Araujo, 68 inches, 173 centimeters. So the brother man says, feel bad for Dumont. She has to fight in main card, not in the main event. Is she really a main event fighter, though? Would be my question. Comfort Chicanery says, Vivi can get down. KGB could be able to handle her physically, but technically, I don't know about it. See, I would say that Lee is the better technical fighter. Araujo has the power. She has power in her hands. Her problem is she throws every punch with all of her power behind them. And she gasses out. Now, Lee has had cardio issues in the past too. But if you were to ask me who has the better cardio control between the two, I'd go KGB Lee. She gasses out later in the fight, whereas Araujo, she's basically 1.5 rounds and done. But technically, I would go with KGB Lee. For a long time, she was a very, you would say, a paint by numbers type of fighter, or a very if and fighter or if then fighter. Lee used to fight, and you could tell she comes from a karate background, doing those katas and stuff, because Lee was one of those fighters where she would do something, and if a fighter reacted a certain way, then she knew how to react to that. But if they reacted to a different way, then she knew how to react to that. But with Lee, if you were to do something like unorthodox or out of the ordinary, it would confuse her. So she was very much like a paint by numbers, like a if-then type of fighter. Whereas Araujo, very heavy-handed boxing, not so bad on the ground, but Lee's pretty good enough on the ground too. The biggest problem thing here is going to be the cardio factor. Has Araujo done anything to fix her cardio issues? I very, very much doubt that. I mean, she's had how much time to do it and hasn't fixed it. It might not be fixable. I don't know. Maybe she just does not have the conditioning to do it. For Lee, she tends to get tired as well, but usually it's later in the fight. Like she can at least get in like later into the second round before she gets tired. With Araujo, it's usually in the first. Comforts Chicanery says when Vivi has the right game plan and conditioning, it's either KO or don't blink until the bell. Well, it's definitely either KO or don't blink until the bell in the first round for sure. Controlled Fury, shoot-a-box-esque. Good point about KGB with the karate background. Yeah, this is going to be a tough one. I think this will be a good fight while it lasts, or at least, or it might. No, I think this will go to decision. I don't see Araujo landing the hard enough punches to stop KGB Lee. I think it's going to be Araujo's fight early on, but I think KGB, she's now at, I want to say she's at MMA Gold now. Or did she leave that already? I can't remember. Excuse me. But I think this will be Araujo's fight in the early going, and then after the first round, KGB will just start to take over. The brother man says Dumont deserves to be his main event fighter. It depends on who else is on that card, though. I mean, I'm not personally that high on Dumont, but I wouldn't say. I'll have to agree to disagree on that one with you, the brother man. Anyway, that's really all I have for you tonight. We have six fight announcements going from April into May. I think each of these fights offers a little bit of something. You know, some of these fights have ranking implications within their division, either towards the bottom ranking or the top ranking. With Araujo versus Lee, and then Lemos versus Andrade has some serious ranking implications down there at strawweight, even though Andrade is coming back down just because she's the former champ. That's going to have some serious implications there as well. But I think each fight brings a little bit of something, has their own, complications, something to watch out for. Mazzani versus Young is a bit of a stinker fight, but then again, those two could come out and just start throwing down and at least make it entertaining, if not skill-wise, then action-wise. So there's always that possibility. But we'll see. The fights I'm most looking forward to would be Barber Delarosa, Lemos Andrade, and Araujo Lee. Fight I would be least looking forward to would be Mazzani versus Young, but like I said, I think all of these fights offer a little bit of something. So going to be very interesting to watch all of them. But let me see what we got going on in the chat here. The brother man asks, what do you think about Nunes leaving ATT and doing her own gym? Could backfire big. Could backfire bigly. I mean, sometimes for some fighters, it could be good. It can be good. Because one thing I like about boxing, compared to MMA is that each fighter brings in their own camp. Like they have their trainers, and then they bring in their own sparring partners and stuff like that. And each fighter's boxer's fight camp is centered around the boxer. Whereas if with MMA, with the big teams, okay, you're getting prepped for your fight, but you've also got teammates that are prepping for their fights. And at the same time, you're prepping for yours. They're helping you prep for yours. You're helping them prep for theirs. And that has its ups and its downs, because it means that the focus isn't entirely on you. Whereas like with the boxing model, your fight camp is your fight camp. So sometimes moving away from a big team like that and starting your own thing allows you to focus more. My big worry about Nunes is that, there were the rumors that she was having a hard time focusing leading into the Pena fight. Whereas if she doesn't have that structure around her, that team structure, and the people that are supposed to keep her focused, well, then now you're leaving it entirely up to her to keep herself focused. And if she's having distractions before the other fight, she could she's going to be even more distracted now, because she's got to manage everything herself now. So, I mean, it could be bad. Could be bad. I mean, it could work out for her. And if it does, then everyone naysaying it, will have egg on their face. But if it doesn't work out for her, then, it could. I just hope she doesn't burn, and just hope she's not burning the bridges over there at ATT. The brother man says also, do you think Pena will win the rematch against Nunes? I don't know. I mean, I think she'll go in as an underdog again, just because it's Amanda Nunes and it was so unexpected the first time. But Nunes needs to come in prepared. She needs to come in prepared. She needs to come in with her head in the game. I mean, tell Nina and the kid, send them away for 6 weeks. Tell Nina, go visit your mom or whatever. And then she needs to buckle down and focus on fighting. Hey, it's great. You're a mom. You love the kid, blah, 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 blah. But you've got to focus on fighting. That's what you do. It's how you make your money. Fight camp time is fight camp time. You gotta put all those distractions to the side. I mean, they've got to be on the periphery. That's why so many fighters, whether MMA fighters or boxers or what have you, go away for fight camp. That's why they go away, to get those distractions out of their life. And you gotta take all your distractions and put them on the periphery. Like, they're going to be in your mind, but you got to have them in the back. They got to be far outside on the periphery, so that they're there, but your focus has to be on the task at hand. And the task at hand is training, beating Pena, and getting your title back. Old guy says Nunes didn't lose the fight because of her trainer. She lost the fight because of her. I agree. I mean, look, Conan Silveira has been the best thing that happened to Amanda Nunes. And I really doubt that she lost that fight because of Conan. She lost it because of her. Conference Chicanery says Kayla stated that she's the top gun of the WMMA scene there. Nunes had to stand down. Kayla Harrison likes to run her mouth. I mean, maybe she's getting the better of Nunes in training. I don't know. But Kayla Harrison does like to run her mouth a bit. But that's how she sells herself. And the brother man asks, is Kayla going to be signed to the UFC as well? You know what? I don't know. And at this point, if it happens, it happens. And if it doesn't, I won't be surprised. I mean, PFL is going to offer her the most money for the least amount of work. And a lot of people are going to be like, but she's a competitor, and she's going to want to go where the competition is the best. What competition? Look, she goes to the UFC. There's one fight that anybody's interested in. It's Amanda Nunes. she goes to Bellator. There's only going to be one fight that anyone's interested in, Cyborg. And guess what? She's not going to make bank on either of those fights. She's just not. So for her, the best option for her, I think, is PFL. You beat up on some scrubs. You beat up on some lightweights that are, most of them are going to be bantamweights or featherweights. And at the end of the year, you collect a cool $1 million. You're raising 2 kids. You need to focus on the money at that point. Also, the brother man also asks, also, Chukagian is looking to go to bantamweight, featherweight. She might be. I mean, she might be. I think if I were the UFC, I think Chukagian is going to test out. They didn't offer an immediate deal to sign back up with them. So I think Chukagian is going to test out free agency, see what there is out there. Honestly, the only thing that's really out there for her is at flyweight is Bellator. Is Bellator going to be able to pay her as much as UFC? No. I mean, she's making around, I think I saw somewhere that she's making around like 70K, 70K to show, 70K to win. That's what Bellator was paying Elimele McFarlane as their champion. So they're not going to pay Chukagian that much. And also, here's the thing. If Bellator signs her, what's going to happen? Fans are going to go, Bellator signing another UFC cast-off. And then also another UFC cast-off that has a reputation for being boring. They already have one of those in Liz Carmouche. So do they really want to sign another fighter that's going to be at the top of that division that costs a lot of money and has a reputation for being boring? I wouldn't if I was Bellator. I'd be like, listen, we'll take you, but you're going to have to take a significant pay cut. That's what I would do if I was Bellator. If I was Bellator, I'd be like, listen, hey, we'll take you, but you got to take a lot less money than what you're getting in the UFC because we just can't afford to pay a non-champion that kind of money. So I think she's going to end up signing back with the UFC. And if I were the UFC, I would send her a contract not as a flyweight. I'd send her a contract as a bantamweight and say, listen, we're only going to offer you bantamweight fights right now because they need to build bantamweight back up. And they need some more action going on in that division. They don't need her down at flyweight killing off all the prospects that they're trying to build into contenders. Because that's what Chukagian is trying to do right now. She's basically going, listen, I'm already beating all of your prospects. I'm beating all the other contenders. Give me another title shot so that she can get the most money at one time. That's what Chukagian's goal is right now. That's basically what she has to do. It's what she's forced to do. She's got to fight all of these contenders and these prospects and deny them a shot so that she can get another one. Because it's the only way to drum up, any interest in a Chukagian title shot again, because she had nothing for Valentina Shevchenko. So for the UFC, they should offer her a contract as a bantamweight. That way the fights will be a little bit closer between her and some of the bantamweights than they are going to be at flyweight. Conference Chicanery says, hoping so, as long as the deal is right for her. Referring to Kayla Harrison. The brother man says, Chuk is looking forward to fight Miesha Tate. I would too. That's a high-profile fight. So I wouldn't blame her. The brother man says, I hear she's undefeated in bantamweight. I think if you're talking about Catlin, I think she is. She lost to Valentina. She lost to Jessica I. Was that at flyweight? Yeah, that was a flyweight. So yes, she was no. She has one loss at bantamweight to Liz Carmouche. So that's a grappling bout. Okay. So yeah, Chukagian has one loss at bantamweight to Liz Carmouche. Aaron Gordon, welcome to the chat, Aaron Gordon. Should Amanda Nunes ever fight at 135 again? If her heart's in it, and if she's focused on it, then yeah. I mean, she was the 135 queen for a good minute. So, if I were her, I think here's an idea. I think that she could do if she beats Pena, gets her title back, then go, you know what? I'm tired of bantamweight. I'm tired of cutting all this weight. So then she can focus on featherweight. So she drops the bantamweight title, wins the bantamweight title back, drops it. Excuse me. And then goes to featherweight if she wanted to. And then UFC could focus on actually building the featherweight division. Does she do that? I don't know. I think she mostly just uses featherweight to get easy paychecks. Brotherman says, maybe I'm wrong. Okay. And also, did you make a review for Palace Athena FC? So, you know what? I did not. I probably should. I think I talked about it on the WMMA report, but I did not end up talking about it, making a review for it. Aaron Gordon asks, what was your opinion on the Palace Athena Championship promotion? Okay, so let's talk about that for a minute. So overall, I thought it was a good show. I thought the production values were good. There was a few miscues where they like cued to the wrong thing at the wrong time. It's a new promotion, first time for that, probably for that production crew to work a fight event, possibly. I don't know. So that's no big deal. I thought production values were good. I thought the matchmaking was good. Some good fights. There were some finishes. So the matchmaking was pretty good overall. I liked the professionalism of it overall was very good. I mean, you could tell that it was a new promotion and that they were still starting out. So there's some hiccups and they're not used to everything yet. But I thought overall the show was good. The biggest blow was losing the main event because Sarah Kaufman brought some name value to that event that none of the other fighters had. And I thought going up against the UFC, a free UFC fight night, also not smart. But it's hard to have any event on a Saturday night that's not going to go against the UFC. So it's hard to. Maybe had they done it, I think had they done it a week before, earlier, they'd had it to themselves. So definitely don't try to go against the UFC in the future. I thought the fights were good. Let me bring up the fights on Tapology here real quick. So overall, the fights were good. Manuelo Marconetto versus Asensa was a good fight, even though it went to decision. It wasn't boring. Maria Dukic versus Clara Risignola at bantamweight went to a split decision. I thought that was fight of the night. Like, that fight made me want to watch both ladies the next time they fight. So I'm very much looking forward to that one. They had 3 straight finishes. Alana Cook beat Max Turcotte Novosedlik via rear naked choke. That was a nice finish there from Alana Cook. Then Melissa Croden defeated Jackie McClain via first round rear naked choke. That was a good one as well. Then Dakota Decheva defeated Simone De Silva in the co-main event second round TKO. Dakota Decheva, man, I'll watch. Definitely keeping an eye out for her next fight. That was, she beat the crap out of Simone de Silva. She was relentless in that fight. And then, honestly, I ended up not watching the main event, which was the strawweight championship. Laura Fontoura defeated Andy Nguyen via armbar in the 4th round. I walked away from the computer for a couple minutes, sat down on my bed, and then got distracted and then fell asleep. I was tired that day, but so I didn't get to watch that one yet. I'm gonna have to go back and watch it. But overall, I liked the event. I thought it was good. It reminded me. It didn't have the star power of early Invicta, but it had, other than the lack of star power, name power, it definitely had the feel of early Invicta. And if you were around for the early days of Invicta, you got excited for those events because you knew there was going to be some good fights at the top with some named veterans, which this one tried to do, and then it didn't work out. But then also you were like, man, Invicta's got some new people coming in. Who are these new fighters? And it made me excited to watch some of these because I didn't know most of the names on this card, but I was excited to see what they could bring. So it brought that early Invicta feeling well, who are these fighters they're bringing in? I mean, most of them were local. The majority of fighters on this card were Canadian. And it was based in Calgary, Alberta, so it had that Western Canadian, event, had Western Canadian fighters, so it got you excited for that, though. How often do you hear about, the ladies coming out of Canada? Not that often, because they're usually fighting elsewhere. So, Aaron Gordon asks, how big do you think PAFC can grow? I think, being an all-women's promotion, it automatically has its limits. Do I think it can grow as big as Invicta? I don't know. I think they can build themselves into a very good proving ground and starting point for a lot of ladies, but I think much like Invicta, eventually a lot of those fighters are going to go elsewhere. It all just depends. I don't know. It didn't seem like there were very many people in attendance. Pay-per-view model hurts sometimes, but I don't blame them for going to pay-per-view. The first initial price they had was $50, and I think they listened and knew that was way too much. $25, I didn't mind paying for it, but a lot of people are going to have a hard time paying for that, especially because they were competing against a free UFC fight night. But if you got to have your event streaming, and you got to pay for that streaming somehow, so you got to do pay-per-view. But other than that, they need to bring in some. If I were them, I'd do maybe try to do a bigger card next time. Now COVID hurt them and they lost some fights, but maybe do the prelims free on YouTube and then do the main card on pay-per-view for $25 or whatever. That could work because then you're building some interest with the free fights, and then you move into pay-per-view. I think that's a good model. That's what UFC does. But the big thing is they need to bring in some sponsors, because you looked at their mat. The center logo was tiny, which I thought was bad, but they had all that space otherwise for sponsor logos, and they had none. But so they need to bring in some sponsors, and that's going to be hard, because to get sponsors and to convince sponsors to pay you money, you got to prove you can get eyes on you. So maybe do that where you have your first several fights free on YouTube, because you're automatically going to get views just because you're free. And then put the rest of the fights on pay-per-view, possibly. Aaron Gordon asks, how much movement do you think women will start to change fight promotion in a couple of years? If I were a fighter, whether male or female, at this point, I would, unless you can get signed to one of the big promotions, like UFC, Bellator, One Championship, who are going to enforce and going to be able to enforce exclusive contracts. If I were an MMA fighter, I would not sign exclusive contracts outside of becoming a champion. There's no need for an exclusive contract because right now you got to take fights when you can get them. It seems like COVID restrictions are finally starting to lessen up, hopefully soon. But I just see no reason absolutely whatsoever to sign an exclusive contract with any promotion. None whatsoever. Because unless the promotion is going to be able to put on regular events and get you fights on a regular basis, they're not doing anything for you. You benefit them more by staying exclusive to them than it benefits you to be exclusive to them. So if you're on a smaller promotion, regional promotion, don't sign exclusive agreements. The brother man says it could grow, but they need to find better venues. Location is very important to growing fights. Invicta, I never saw. I mean, I was at 3 different Invicta events, and none of them were anywhere near selling out. Conference Chicanery says, as far as PA, they seem to have knowledgeable matchmakers and scouts. That is very important. I agree. You have to have matchmakers who are going to. Your scouts are important. Scouts that can find good fighters, that can build relationships with gyms and managers. But then you also got to be able to match those fighters up well too, to provide good fights. And if you're looking to grow prospects, you got to have the right matchmaking to grow those prospects as well. You got to build the prospects up. And Gordon says, I was too young for early Invicta 24. Oh, man, you're a baby. You're young. You got 13 years on you. Conference Chicanery says, good point about that early Invicta feel. The brother man says, Invicta needs to go monthly subscription and find better sponsors. Yeah. Monthly subscription isn't a bad idea, but you got to have more to offer than just Invicta if you're going to go monthly subscription. Brother man says BKFC did very well with this. Yeah, they do have their app. They have their own app. They have those monthly subscriptions, but they also brought in like other events as well, which I feel is important. If you're going to do the monthly subscription, you got to have other events as well. Like you got to have partnerships with other events that you have to offer besides just yourself. The brother man says UK and Ireland has ended COVID restrictions. Well, England I'm not sure about Ireland. England has. I don't think Scotland is going to, because basically anything England does, Scotland's like, no, we're doing the opposite. John Conference Chicanery giving the brother man props. Aaron Gordon says, what was early Invicta like? It was fun. I started watching Invicta around Invicta 3, but like I was saying earlier, they had some name value fighters. Like if you were already familiar with WMMA and who the fighters were, they had some name value fighters. They were able to bring some fighters from like Strikeforce and some of the Elite XC fighters in, so that they had that name value at the top, like Kat Zingano, Sarah Kaufman. They had, I think Amanda Nunes fought for them early on, if I remember right. I think she did. Let me see here real quick. Yeah, Amanda Nunes fought for Invicta twice, going 1-1. So as the UFC bought out in Strikeforce, you didn't know what they were going to do, because you knew eventually Strikeforce was going to get absorbed into the UFC. Like that was obvious from the get-go. They kept some Strikeforce events going after the buyout. but eventually it got absorbed, and everyone knew that was going to happen. And it was up in the air what was going to happen with the ladies. So a bunch of female fighters who had worked with Shanna in the past, because she had worked for Strikeforce in the past, she had done work with the UFC in the past. She had been in mixed martial arts in the scene, working behind the scenes for a long time. And the ladies went to her and go, "Hey, Shanna, is there anything you can do for us?" Because she hadn't thought about it at first. And she said, "I'll see what I can do." And so she found a business partner. I can't remember the lady's name, and it's not important now anyway, and started Invicta FC because she thought, well, let's try this. Let's try an all women's promotion. It had been done in Japan before, but it hadn't been done stateside. So she got it. And she got some of those fighters to come over from Strikeforce, whose contracts were up in the air, who hadn't been brought over to the UFC yet. And so they had those big names like Nunes, Zingano, brought in, what's her name? Marloes Kunin was one of their big early names. So they had that name recognition at the top of the cards, but then they also did very well in scouting and matchmaking for the younger, less experienced fighters. I mean, look at who made their debuts for them. Paige Vanzant, I think she had one fight outside of Invicta, and then went to Invicta. Tisha Torres made her pro debut in Invicta. Rosa Namajunas made her pro debut in Invicta. A bunch of really good fighters made their debuts in Invicta. And then they brought in fighters who made their debuts outside of Invicta, but really built their name in Invicta. So like the early days of Invicta were very fun, exciting, because you're like, man, who are they going to get to fight each other? And then at the top, what names are they going to get for each event? And then, well, who are they going to bring in that's new that we hadn't heard of yet? That's what the early days of Invicta were like, was just, what's next? Because you didn't know what was next. And you didn't even know if it was going to last. No one knew if it was going to last. So it was exciting just to see what was going to happen. Aaron Gordon asks, who do you think is the best promotion outside of the UFC? It just depends on what you're looking for, honestly. One championship doesn't always have the best matchmaking or whatever, but they have the best fights. Bellator tries to build prospects themselves as well as having established veterans. Ryzen, if you haven't watched a Ryzen show, you got to watch one just to get that feel, that experience of the big Japanese experience. But I mean, every promotion offers something different. So, Chicanery says early Invicta had Asian and European pipelines as well as Brazilian. Lots of international talent and a Wild West flavor. Yes, Wild West was basically a good way to describe early Invicta. But yeah, they had the Asian pipelines because they had a partnership with Jules at the time. They had brought in some European fighters. Like that's how they found Joanne Calderwood. What's her name? Not Mayu Suatama. Katya Kankanpa, Killer Bunny. They brought in some good European fighters. They had, the Brazilian names they could bring in. So they were bringing in a good host of international talent too. Yeah, they went hard in the paint off the rip. Is definitely a good way to describe Invicta. And that's how you got to go sometimes as a promotion. Like sometimes promotions, they want to put on a big, huge show and blah, 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 and talk a big talk, but then they're not always necessarily delivering. Whereas Invicta, they said, listen, we're going to try to bring you the best fights that we can, and that's what they did. And that's what got people interested in Invicta. And the ladies were bringing it at the time. Like, there was no feeling out rounds with a lot of the early Invicta fights. The ladies were bringing it. And that's because the skills weren't where they are now. So they just went out there and fought, and it made for exciting fights and overall exciting events. Bruce Bobtrotter says Fiallo only got paid $12K for that fight against Pena. That is effed up. So that was a guy's fight last night. Says fighter pay needs to improve. I agree. Fighter pay does need to improve overall. But welcome to the chat, Bruce Bobtrotter. You're a newbie too. You and Aaron Gordon, both. Says Aaron Gordon says, who are some underrated women fighters pre-2017? Good question. Some underrated women fighters pre-2017. Man, that really put me on a spot here. I'd have to think. Let me think on that one here, because underrated, it just depends, because some people say fighters are underrated and some people say they're overrated. It just depends. I'll think about that one. I'll try to, let me write that down. Underrated fighters pre-2017. So I'll try to put a list together, and then I will put them into a community post for you. Conference Chicanery agrees with Bruce Bobtrotter. I hope that is not the start of spam. Aaron Gordon says, what promotion has the best atmosphere? Whew. Best atmosphere? It's hard to say. I think you have to actually go to live events to really judge what has the best atmosphere as far as like an audience member. A lot of people say like Ryzen right now, Pride in the old days, and now Ryzen. If they say if you can go to the fights and watch, it is an experience like no other. I mean, I've talked to people that have gone to Ryzen shows, and they say it is top-notch experience overall. I've only been to one UFC event. That was back in 2005. UFC 53 heavy hitters. So I watched Rich Franklin win the middleweight crown, and then got the next fight was Andrei Arlovsky taking on Justin Eilers and retaining the heavyweight crown. But that was at Boardwalk Hall in Atlantic City. I had a fun time there. But that was good. Ooh, here's a good one from Conference Chicanery. It says Megumi Fujii. You're missing an I there. But Mega Megu should be a household name, but you almost never hear her mentioned anymore. Yeah. Aaron Gordon. If you want to look for an underrated fighter who didn't get a lot of name recognition, even at her peak, go look up this lady's fights. And I just posted it in the chat there. Megumi Fujii. She went undefeated for like 22 straight fights before suffering. Her first loss ever was in Bellator to Zoila Frausto, Zoila Jurgel at the time. And then she dropped a pair of belts to Jessica Aguilar as well. But that was back in the tournament days of Bellator, like when Bellator was all about their seasonal tournaments, like kind of like what PFL is now. That's basically what Bellator was. You fought through the tournament, and if it was like the first time they did your weight class, at the end you won your weight class's championship, and then you sat out the next season and then faced whoever won that next season's tournaments. And they did one ladies tournament ever. It was at strawweight before Invicta even was really getting off as a name, before Invicta started. And they had some good names there. They had Jessica Aguilar, Zoila Frausto, Carla Esparza was in that tournament, and Megumi Fujii was like the early favorite to win. So definitely check out some of Megumi Fujii's names. And let me bring up Sherdog Fight Finder. I'll post her record. Megumi Fujii. Post this in the chat for you. Comfort Chicanery says her losses were weird too. I didn't like the judges' decisions, but I also couldn't understand why Mega Megu ain't turn on the grappling jets in championship rounds. Disappointing. Yeah. Well, she was also getting old at the time already. I mean, she's 47 right now. So when she fought, like when she fought Frausto back in 2010, she was already into her upper 30s. So that was 10 years. She was like, what, 35 already. So she was starting to slide downhill. But Aaron Gordon asks, who is a top up-and-coming fighter that should move up the ranks? You mean like in the UFC already or outside? Kayla Harrison's promotion situation. I talked about this. I don't think you were in the chat yet, but I talked about this earlier. I think the best move for her would be to stick to PFL. Try to keep collecting that $1 million. I mean, they're paying her big money every fight as it is, and then once you get into the playoffs, that's when your money builds up to that eventual $1 million if you win. I'd do that. She's having an easy time so far. None of those fighters have been challenging her. And it's easy money. You're a prize fighter. At the end of the day, mixed martial arts is a prize fight. And you got to get what makes you the most money. And she adopted her sister's kids. She's got 2 kids to take care of. She's got to go with what gets her the most money. So the UFC and Bellator aren't going anywhere. PFL might not be around next year. You can get the money in PFL, go for that money now. So I already talked about Nunes leaving her camp already. So if you want to go back and watch that afterwards, go ahead. Outside of the UFC. So I just released 2 videos over the last couple of days about top prospects to watch for this year. Some of those fighters are definitely UFC ready. So go ahead and check them out. They're I think they're titled, WMMA Prospect Watch for 2022. It's 2 parts, two videos. So definitely go and check those out later. Don't forget to subscribe. How well would Kayla Harrison do in the UFC? There's only one fight for her in the UFC because she's not going to make bantamweight. She's too big for bantamweight. She can make featherweight. And at featherweight, what interesting fights are there for her? There's Amanda Nunes, and that's it. That's why I think she should stay in PFL, because you've got more fights available for more money. Do you think UFC fighters on the brink should sign with PFL? I mean, depends. Do they really want to go all the way up to fight at lightweight? It doesn't always work out. So, just depends. I mean, because PFL is not going to be building any more women's divisions. They have the formula worked out. They have who they want. So, it just depends. Anyway, we've gone an hour and 15 minutes, which is about twice as long as I thought we'd go. Aaron Gordon, what do you think is next for Megan Anderson? I think she's done fighting. She seems to be doing esports now and other work. Looks like she might be getting into the movies possibly. Doing some stunt work. which would work out well for her. You know, whatever she does, I hope she does well at it. You know, I'm not a huge Megan Anderson fan, like of her fighting and stuff, but certainly hope she does well. But yeah, it looks like she's going to be doing esports. I think she already signed to an esports team, and also is going to be getting into like some stunt work. So good luck to her. So that's about all I have for today. That's actually went way past what I had planned. So if you haven't yet, hit the like button. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. Leave your thoughts in the comments if you're watching on playback. Also, like I said, I am with the One Championship, One Shop affiliate program. If you want, go down into the description. I have a link there and a coupon code. Get you 10% off any One Championship gear you might like. This is my favorite shirt from them, the Panda, Xiaojing Nan. She just defended her title for the 5th or 6th time last weekend. So go check that out. Go get some gear. You get 10% off. And then it lets me get 10% off as well. That's really all I have. So 6 upcoming fights we covered tonight. Let me know your thoughts. But also, like I said, don't forget to subscribe to WMMA Now, the best, most complete women's mixed martial arts dedicated platform on YouTube. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.